Talk Radio, KTIE 590. You're listening to the Inland Empire Real Sense Radio. This is a production of Real Estate Radio Network, and when we left for break, Bob Irish was going over a lot of the information that we need to know about modifications, short sales, REOs, and so on. It seems to me that the banks want people to be behind on their payments before they're even willing to talk to them. Are you finding that to be the case?
Save one or two small banks, yes, absolutely. If you're not behind, there won't be a short sale, but there are a few exceptions.
You know, I'm getting a lot of people in right now, and I've talked about this the last couple of weeks, that are taking money out. They're taking equity out of their current residences, and they're going out and they're finding some really, really good deals on properties as investments. And one of the things that came to mind is rather than going into an REO as an investment, it seems to me that you would be miles ahead if you would get a short sale, because typically the house isn't trashed as bad. Are you seeing investors coming into your marketplace? Are you getting investors buying short sales?
Absolutely. The idea that a short sale is in better shape is typically true. The homeowner's still there. They still have a vested interest to take care of it. You know, they feel obligated to do a good job. They know that they're going to have to be moving at some point, but keep the grass green, keep the vandals out, you know, make sure it doesn't get just destroyed. And that buyer is able to come in and either move in themselves or re-rent it out to someone who can afford it and keep the neighborhood, you know, stable. And that's what the banks are looking for. They want a stable neighborhood, so they want the homeowners to stay there as well, because they know they don't have to spend money on property preservation.
Right. You were talking to me the other day about a young lady down in Lake Elsinore.
Yes.
That talk about going for a ride.
Yeah.
Share that story with us.
Susie, I'll call her, because that's if you read today's article in the Press Enterprise, I actually put it in the paper. I hope it's running today. I haven't read the paper this morning yet, but it's supposed to run. Susie, not her real name. Her husband was sick, so he lost his job. The house they were in, they fell behind on their payments. This is 3 years ago. A real estate broker came in and said, "I'll cure your note," meaning he'll make up the payments. And but I'll let you stay here for a while, you know, and rent it back from me, but at least you won't have to get kicked out. So she said, great, signed over the house to him, and at least she had a place to live, right? So he refinanced the house a couple of times until he took every bit of equity out, and then, of course, quit making payments, and the house got foreclosed on, so she got kicked out. She went to live with her father at the same time her husband actually died. So she's living with her father, she's homeless, and her husband just died. And she gets an inheritance of, if I remember correctly, $127,000. The real estate broker says, "Hey, that's great, and I help you buy another house. Sign over that $127,000 to me. Just lend it to me. I'll pay you back, you know, interest better than any bank will pay you, and I'll help you buy another house." She said, "That's great. You were so nice to me before and tried to help us. We appreciate it." He put her into one of his houses that he owned. It was a rental. And she paid him $10,000 to get 50% title on that house. Well, as of today, another year later, she still doesn't own any portion of that house. The $127,000 is gone, and he won't give it back, nor is he making his regular monthly payments. And guess what? That house is, I looked at the numbers, 3 times the value of the house is what he owes on the house, and he's also fell behind on that, and it's going to go through foreclosure as well, and she's going to be homeless once again. So this is a real estate broker who did this to somebody. And because of the stories I've written in the Press Enterprise, she felt safe in calling me. She wouldn't identify herself. She called from a blocked number for the first 2 or 3 times we talked. And then she finally broke down and told me who she was, the address, and everybody's names. So that's the kind of thing that happens that we need to stop.
You know, it just comes back to the same thing. If you have somebody offering you something that seems too good to be true, there's no silver bullet. There's no magic lining. You need to talk to the professionals. You might have to work a little bit at getting out of a bad situation, but you need to talk to professionals that are dedicated to doing what is necessary to help you through a hard time. And like Bob was saying, like I was talking about Bob earlier, it's not about making a commission. There are a lot of times when he'll have people call him and he refers them over to the modification center. He doesn't make a dime out of that. And he hopes that a modification is successful for you. He doesn't want you out of the house. He doesn't want your house on the market because it just slows down the recovery. But whatever is necessary, you need to align yourself with the proper professionals. Bankruptcy attorney, credit repair, lender, realtor, somebody like Bob who has a lot of the answers, both in modifications, short sales, REOs, and from what I was understanding earlier is you go in ahead of time before you even have an offer and sometimes get short sales approved by banks so you know what they'll deal with. Is it correct, or do you need an offer to get a short sale moving with the bank?
There's two answers, and the one is mostly no. Banks don't pre-approve short sales. If you have a HAMP turned down, loan modification turned down, if you have certain kinds of loan, FHA or whatever, they will set the prices, but that's 1 in 20 or 30 that will come with a preset price. So what we have to do is kind of work backwards. We market the house for what we think the fair market value is, and we try to get an offer. Once we get an offer, we send that to the bank. Then the bank lets us know if we were close or not. If the answer is yes, then they say, great, we'll take that offer. If they feel that the market value is higher, they will, of course, counter what it is that we ask for. So it is difficult to guess what the bank's going to want because, again, the bank then has to go to their investor, and that investor may or may not have a true picture of truly what's going on in this particular location. So the answer is, unfortunately, no, there are not really any preset prices for short sales. It's always a negotiation from day one.
And that comes back to something that I talked to over the last couple of programs is you don't want to, nothing against Aunt Mabel, but Aunt Mabel's son, who's a realtor in Orange County part-time. If you live out here in the Inland Empire, you want to find an agent who is accessible to your area, who is knowledgeable of your area, and who has transactions in your area. So you need to find somebody who can put all of the information together and give you valid answers to your questions. And somebody from out of the area is not the answer. You know, I have nothing against people that are out of the area. A lot of the people that I meet are nice people. But you need to work with somebody who's knowledgeable of what you're dealing with. And that's just a plain hard fact. You were also talking about I think it was a gentleman in Riverside who had an offer. He came to you with an offer, and it was, I think, an offer from a realtor who wasn't licensed, who was also represented by a lender who wasn't licensed. It was mind-boggling to me, but we hear it more often than not.
Convoluted, even though I'm not sure I 100% understand the story, but this same thing, this gentleman called me up, saw my articles in the newspaper, said, I need your help. And he showed up with a stack of papers and said, look, I own 2 houses next door to each other. I fell behind on one. This investor tried to buy it. It didn't work out, and I lost the house to foreclosure. So I moved to the house next door, which I also owned. And that same investor is trying to buy that house. And then he's going to rent it back to me. I said, well, look, you really can't rent back on a short sale. That's just not kosher. That's called an arm's length transaction, and, you can't really do that. And he says, well, the whole thing is kind of smelly. I said, well, let's look at stuff. So I checked out the investor's name, who was real estate licensed, but his license has been suspended, restricted, revoked, or otherwise. I checked the name of the investment company, the mortgage company name that he had his letterhead on, and that was very clearly revoked a couple years ago. I looked at the listing agent's name and couldn't find anything in particular, but then I found the buyer's agent's name, and guess what? His license was also restricted, revoked, or otherwise problems. So I told the gentleman, I said, look, the 3 people you're dealing with out of the 4 don't have licenses to practice real estate in California. And you think something's funny with the deal. It probably is something funny with the deal. So he left the office saying, what do? I said, Riverside County DA Task Force, Fraud Task Force, that's all you can do, because you can't stay there. You're going to have mortgage fraud if you stay there and you come back. You're going to violate the arm's length transaction if you stay there, and the banks don't want you to stay there. But you've also been taken advantage of by people you're supposed to have been able to trust, and those people need to be reported, investigated, and to see if you can stop what's happened thus far, and maybe you can stay in the house through some other means.
It just brings it all back to the surface. There's so much fraud going on out there. If anybody wants to go to the DRE website, you can check out any realtor's licensing. If you want to go to the NMLS website, you can check out any lender. Banks don't have to be really licensed by NMLS. They're under FDIC, and a lot of them are simply clerks. So a lot of them don't know what they're doing. But with that being said, align yourself with trusted individuals. Anything that we have said today, anything that you need more information on, you need, and I'm not going to ask you to call me, you need to call me, 1-800-658-8183, extension 24. Once again, 1-800-658-8183. Bob Irish's direct line, 951-313-6080. And I hope we can get Bob back on the show again. I know that there's a lot more information, but Bob, thanks again for being with us on the Inland Empire, Real Sense Radio, and I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Thank you, John, for inviting me.
Well, it was my pleasure, and everybody have a great week.